The black Mercedes pulled up to the iron gates, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. This wasn't just any car arriving at any house. This was the kind of moment that changes things, though nobody knew it yet. Behind the wheel sat Michael Harrison, a man who had everything money could buy and almost nothing that actually mattered. Michael pressed the button on the gate remote, watching as the massive iron structures slowly swung open. The driveway stretched ahead of him like a ribbon of possibility, lined with perfectly trimmed hedges and old oak trees that had seen more years than he had lived. This estate in Connecticut wasn't just big. It was the kind of place that made people stop and stare from the road, wondering who lived there and what their life must be like. At 35 years old, Michael had built a tech empire that most people only dream about. His company had gone public 3 years ago, and overnight he became one of those people you read about in business magazines. The ones with the corner offices and the private jets. The ones who seem to have figured out some secret formula to life that everyone else is still searching for. But if you looked closely at Michael's eyes, really looked, you might notice something missing. A kind of emptiness that no amount of money seemed able to fill. He parked the Mercedes in front of the main entrance, stepping out onto the gravel driveway. The house loomed above him, all stone and glass and expensive architecture. 3 stories of pure luxury. He had paid cash for it, barely blinking at the price tag that would have made most people faint. It was his 6th property, but the first one he actually planned to live in full-time. The others were just investments, numbers on a spreadsheet, keys he kept in a drawer and rarely thought about. The front doors were already open. Someone must have heard him arrive. Michael grabbed his leather briefcase from the passenger seat and walked toward the entrance, his Italian shoes crunching on the gravel. He was already on his phone, checking emails, responding to messages, living in that constant state of digital distraction that had become his normal. That's when he saw her. Standing just inside the doorway was a woman who looked to be in her early 60s, maybe older. She wore a simple gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back neatly, her hands clasped in front of her. Her face had the kind of lines that come from decades of smiling, though she wasn't smiling now. Just standing there, calm and still, like a tree that had weathered countless storms. "Mr. Harrison," she said quietly, her voice carrying just a hint of an accent. "Welcome to your new home. I'm Rosa Martinez. I've been the housekeeper here for the past 22 years. Michael barely glanced up from his phone. "Right," he muttered, walking past her into the grand foyer. His eyes swept over the marble floors, the crystal chandelier hanging from the vaulted ceiling, the curved staircase that looked like something from a movie. "I got the paperwork about you. You're staying on, part of the property agreement or whatever." Rosa nodded, though he wasn't looking at her to see it. "Yes, sir. The previous owners, the Thompsons, they arranged for me to continue if you wished. I know this house very well. Every corner, every need it has." "Great," Michael said, still typing on his phone. He wandered further into the house, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I'll need coffee ready by 6 every morning. Black, no sugar. I work from home most days, so I'll need lunch around 1. Nothing heavy, I don't have time for food comas. Dinner at 8, but I'll usually eat out or order in. Keep the place clean. Stay out of my way when I'm on calls and we'll be fine." He rattled off these instructions like he was programming a computer, not speaking to a human being. Rosa listened to every word, her expression never changing. She had heard many things in her years of service. She had learned when to speak and when to simply observe. "I understand, Mr. Harrison," she said when he finally paused. "Is there anything you'd like now? Perhaps something to eat after your drive? Some tea?" Michael waved his hand dismissively. "No, just show me to the master bedroom. I have 3 conference calls this afternoon and I need to set up my office." Rosa led him up the grand staircase, her footsteps quiet against the marble steps. Michael followed, still glued to his phone, not noticing the family photos that still lined the walls. Pictures of the Thompson family who had filled this house with laughter and love for decades. He didn't notice the way Rosa's hand gently touched the banister, a gesture of familiarity and affection for a place she knew as well as her own heartbeat. The master suite was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens and the forest beyond. A king-sized bed dominated one side of the room, and a sitting area with a fireplace occupied the other. Rosa walked to the windows and adjusted the curtains slightly, letting in more afternoon light. "The previous owners preferred these curtains open," she said softly. "The morning sun comes in beautifully." but I can keep them closed if you prefer darkness. I don't care about the sun, Michael said, already pulling his laptop from his briefcase. I just need the Wi-Fi password and to know where the office is. The study is down the hall, third door on the left, Rosa replied. Mr. Thompson used it for his writing. It has built-in bookshelves and a large desk facing the garden. The Wi-Fi password is written on a card on the desk. Michael was already heading for the door. Fine. Don't disturb me for the rest of the day. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. Michael lived in that enormous house like he was staying in a hotel. He moved from room to room, barely seeing them, certainly not appreciating them. He left coffee cups on expensive tables, dropped clothes on the floor, and scattered papers across every surface. And Rosa moved behind him like a quiet shadow, cleaning up, organizing, maintaining order in the chaos he created. He never asked her anything personal, never inquired about her day, her life, whether she had family or friends or dreams of her own. To Michael, Rosa was just part of the house's operating system, something that came with the property like the heating system or the security cameras. Functional, necessary, invisible. Rosa watched him during those weeks. She saw how he ate meals without tasting them, always on his phone or laptop. She noticed how he never went outside, never walked in the garden she tended so carefully. She observed that no one visited him, that his phone calls were always about business, never personal. She saw a man drowning in success, suffocating under the weight of his own achievements. Sometimes, late at night when Michael was still working in his office, Rosa would stand in the kitchen preparing his breakfast for the next morning. She would look around at this beautiful house that felt so empty now, so different from when the Thompsons lived here. Back then there had been music and laughter, grandchildren running through the halls, birthday parties in the garden, love in every corner. Now there was just silence and the glow of computer screens. Rosa had seen many things in her 62 years. She had lived through poverty and wealth, loss and joy, despair and hope. She had learned that real richness had nothing to do with the size of your house or the price of your car. But she knew that some lessons couldn't be taught. They had to be learned through experience, through collision with reality, through moments that crack open your carefully constructed walls. She didn't know it yet, but one of those moments was coming. Soon Michael's perfectly ordered, emotionally empty life would collide with something unexpected, and Rosa, the woman he barely saw, would become the teacher he never knew he needed. The stage was set. The expensive house stood ready, and two people living in the same space but completely different worlds were about to discover that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected sources. Everything was about to change. All it would take was one evening, one emergency, and one woman's quiet strength to show a millionaire what he had been missing all along. 3 weeks had passed since Michael moved into the estate, and if anything, he had become even more absorbed in his own world. His company was in the middle of launching a new product, and he spent 18 hours a day glued to screens, barking orders into his phone, living on coffee and whatever Rosa quietly left for him. It was a Thursday evening when everything changed. Michael had been planning this dinner party for weeks. Not the fun kind of dinner party where friends gather and laugh over good food. This was business. Pure calculated business. 5 potential investors were coming to the house. People with deep pockets and the power to take his company to the next level. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to scream success. He had hired one of the most exclusive catering companies in the state. They cost more than most people's monthly salary, but Michael didn't care. This dinner could mean millions, maybe billions. The caterers were supposed to arrive at 3 in the afternoon to set up. The guests were coming at 7. It was all planned down to the minute. At 2:30, Michael's phone rang. He was in his office, reviewing his presentation for the 100th time, making sure every slide was perfect. He didn't recognize the number, but something made him answer. "Mr. Harrison, this is Jennifer from Prestige Catering." The woman's voice was tight with stress. "I'm calling with some terrible news. Our head chef was in a car accident this morning. He's okay, but he's in the hospital, and we've just discovered that our entire kitchen staff has come down with food poisoning. We think it was something from our supplier. Sir, I'm so sorry, but we cannot fulfill your order tonight. We can refund you immediately and help you find another caterer." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "What? No. No. This is impossible. Do you understand how important this dinner is? Find another chef, call someone, I don't care what it costs. Mr. Harrison, we've tried. Every high-end caterer in the area is already booked for tonight. It's peak season. I've made 20 calls. I'm so incredibly sorry. Michael ended the call and just sat there staring at his phone. The guests would be here in 4.5 hours. 5 incredibly important people who expected an experience that matched his reputation, and he had nothing. No food, no plan, no way out. He started making calls himself, frantically dialing every restaurant, every caterer, anyone he could think of. But the answer was always the same. Too short notice. Already booked. Impossible. With each rejection, the panic grew tighter in his chest. This wasn't just embarrassing. This could damage his reputation, lose him the deal, make him look incompetent. At 3:15, Michael stormed out of his office and practically ran down the stairs. He found Rosa in the kitchen, as he knew he would. She was preparing what looked like his usual lunch, moving with that same calm efficiency she always had. Rosa. His voice came out sharper than he intended, sharp with panic and frustration. I have a massive problem. She turned to face him, her expression neutral. Yes, Mr. Harrison. The caterers canceled. Food poisoning or something. I have 5 extremely important investors coming here in less than 4 hours, and I have nothing to feed them. Nothing. Do you understand? This dinner could make or break $100 million deal. He was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. He looked like a man coming apart at the seams. All his money, all his success, and he couldn't solve this one simple problem. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron slowly. What were the caterers going to make? I don't know. Some fancy menu, multiple courses, things with French names. Does it matter? It's not happening now. There was a long pause. Rosa looked at him with those calm eyes, and for a moment, Michael wanted to scream at her to do something, say something, fix this, but she just stood there thinking. I could cook for your dinner party, she said finally. Michael let out a bitter laugh. Rosa, no offense, but these people are used to Michelin star restaurants. This isn't about just making food. It needs to be impressive. It needs to be extraordinary. I understand, Rosa said simply. I can make something extraordinary. Michael was about to argue, to explain why this was impossible, but something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't defensive or hurt. It was just confident, quiet and confident. What would you make? He asked, his voice smaller now, desperate. Rosa moved to the refrigerator and started pulling things out, examining them with a practiced eye. I will make a meal they will remember. Traditional dishes from my home, but presented beautifully. Real food, not pretentious food. Food with soul. These people expect fancy, Michael insisted. These people are tired of fancy, Rosa replied, setting ingredients on the counter. They eat fancy every day. They go to the same expensive restaurants, order the same impressive dishes. I will give them something different, something true. Michael realized he had no choice, no other options, no backup plan. He was completely at the mercy of his housekeeper, a woman whose cooking he had barely noticed in 3 weeks of eating it. Fine, he said, the word coming out defeated. But Rosa, please, this is everything. If this dinner fails. It will not fail, Rosa said, and there was something in her voice that made him almost believe her. Now please let me work, I have much to do. Michael retreated to his office, but he couldn't focus on anything. Every few minutes he would get up and pace, check the time, imagine all the ways this evening could go wrong. At 4 o'clock he went down to the kitchen, intending to check on progress, maybe offer suggestions, definitely to worry out loud. What he saw stopped him in the doorway. The kitchen had been transformed. Rosa moved through it like a conductor leading an orchestra. There were pots on every burner. The oven was going, and the most incredible smells filled the air. Spices he couldn't name, combinations he had never experienced. She had set up multiple stations working on different dishes simultaneously, with a precision that was almost hypnotic to watch. Do you need help? Michael asked, feeling useless. No, thank you, Rosa said without looking up. Her hands were moving, quickly chopping vegetables with perfect uniformity. But you could set the dining room table. Use the good china from the cabinet. the silver from the drawer in the sideboard. Make it beautiful. Michael, who had never set a table in his adult life, who paid people to do such things, found himself in the dining room pulling out plates and silverware. He didn't even know where things were. He had eaten in this room maybe twice since moving in. But following Rosa's instructions, he started setting up. As he worked, he could hear her in the kitchen, could smell the food developing, changing, becoming something magical. He realized he had never actually paid attention to food before. It was just fuel, something to consume while working. But these smells were different. They made him stop and breathe deeply. They made him hungry in a way he hadn't felt in years. By 6:30, the table was set. The house looked perfect. Michael had changed into his best suit, and Rosa emerged from the kitchen looking tired but composed. She had changed into a fresh uniform and pulled her hair back neatly. "Everything is ready," she announced. "When your guests arrive and are seated, I will serve the first course. There will be 4 courses total. Each one will be paired with stories you can tell about authentic cuisine." "Stories?" Michael asked, confused. "These are not just dishes, Mr. Harrison. They are history, culture, love made visible. I will tell you what to say." The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Michael took a deep breath, put on his business smile, and went to greet his guests. William Chen, the venture capitalist from San Francisco. Patricia Okonkwo, who ran one of the biggest investment firms on the East Coast. David Kim, known for turning companies into billion-dollar enterprises. Rachel Goldstein, whose name alone opened doors across the industry. And Thomas Anderson, the eldest of the group, a legend in the tech investment world. They entered with the air of people used to being impressed, people who had seen everything and were rarely surprised. Michael led them to the living room for drinks, making small talk, his stomach tight with anxiety. They asked about the house, complimented his taste, made the kind of polite conversation that means nothing and everything in business. When he led them to the dining room, he saw their expressions shift slightly. The table was beautiful, yes, but it wasn't the over-the-top display they probably expected. It was elegant but warm. Personal somehow. "I hope you're all hungry," Michael said, gesturing for them to sit. "I have something special planned for tonight." They settled into their chairs and Rosa appeared with the first course. Simple white bowls containing what looked like a soup, garnished with fresh herbs and a drizzle of cream. She set them down silently and disappeared back to the kitchen. Patricia picked up her spoon, exchanging glances with the others. They were clearly wondering what they were about to experience. This didn't look like the meal from an expensive caterer. It looked almost homemade. The first taste changed everything. William closed his eyes. "Oh my God. What is this?" Rachel asked, taking another spoonful immediately. Michael, who had taken his own first bite, was equally stunned. The soup was unlike anything he had ever tasted. Rich and complex, with layers of flavor that unfolded as you ate it. It was somehow both comforting and sophisticated, familiar and exotic. He remembered Rosa's words about stories. "This is a traditional Mexican pozole," he said, hoping he was getting it right. "It's a dish that goes back centuries, usually reserved for special celebrations. The depth of flavor comes from hours of slow cooking." "It's incredible," Thomas said, a man who rarely gave compliments. "Where did you find this caterer?" Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know what to say. Michael sat there, with his spoon halfway to his mouth, frozen by Thomas's question. "Where did you find this caterer?" The truth sat on his tongue like a stone. His housekeeper made it. The woman he barely acknowledged, who he treated like a piece of furniture, had created this incredible dish, but admitting that felt somehow wrong, like it would diminish what they were experiencing. "It's a long story," Michael finally said, which was both true and completely inadequate. David was already finishing his bowl. "Well, whoever they are, I want their number. My wife has been looking for someone who can do authentic cuisine for months." The second course arrived, and again, Rosa moved like a ghost. She placed the plates in front of each guest with practiced precision. This time it was fish, perfectly seared, sitting on a bed of rice with vegetables that looked like art. The colors were vibrant, the presentation simple but stunning. "This is incredible plating," Patricia said, lifting her fork. "So different from the usual fussy arrangements you see." One bite and the table went quiet again. The kind of quiet that happens when people are so absorbed in what they're tasting that conversation stops. The fish was tender and flaky, seasoned with something that made Michael's taste buds wake up in ways they never had. The rice wasn't just rice. It had depth and character, each grain distinct but part of something larger. "There's cilantro in this," Rachel said, "and lime, but there's something else, something I can't quite identify." Michael thought back to watching Rosa in the kitchen, to the dozens of ingredients she had pulled out. The secret to good cooking, he found himself saying, channeling something he'd heard Rosa mention once in passing, is knowing when to let the main ingredient shine and when to support it with complementary flavors. Where had that come from? He barely recognized himself, talking about food like it mattered, like it was more than just something to consume while checking emails. The conversation around the table shifted. Usually at these business dinners, people talked about markets and valuations, about competition and strategy. But tonight was different. The food had opened something up. William started telling a story about his grandmother's cooking when he was growing up in Taiwan. Patricia shared memories of learning to make her mother's jollof rice. Even Thomas, usually all business, talked about the small Italian restaurant his parents owned when he was young. Michael listened, realizing he had no stories like this. No memories of family meals or recipes passed down. His parents had been busy professionals who ordered takeout most nights. Food was fuel, nothing more. He had carried that belief into his adult life without questioning it. The third course was meat, slow-cooked until it fell apart at the touch of a fork, served with handmade tortillas and an array of fresh salsas. Rosa had also brought out small dishes of pickled vegetables, fresh cheese, and other accompaniments. "This is birria," David said with surprise. "My college roommate was from Jalisco, and his mother made this once. But I've never had it like this. This is restaurant quality. No, better than restaurant quality." "It's the kind of thing you can't rush," Michael said, again drawing on something he'd overheard Rosa mention during her weeks of cooking for him. "The meat cooks for hours until it becomes tender enough to melt on your tongue. It's about patience and respect for the process." He was talking about cooking, but as the words left his mouth, he wondered if they applied to other things too. His whole life was about rushing, about cutting corners to save time, about efficiency over everything. When had he last been patient with anything? When had he last respected a process instead of just demanding results? The dinner stretched on, and something unexpected happened. These 5 powerful people, who could have been anywhere in the world tonight, who had probably been to hundreds of expensive business dinners, seemed genuinely happy to be here. They weren't checking their phones. They weren't rushing through courses. They were present, engaged, enjoying themselves. When Rosa brought out the final course, a dessert that involved caramelized milk and fresh fruit, the table actually applauded. Michael had never seen anything like it. These were serious business people, not the type to show emotion easily. But they clapped for a housekeeper they hadn't even seen clearly, for food that had touched something in them beyond just taste. "Michael," Thomas said, setting down his spoon after finishing the dessert, "I came here tonight prepared to hear a pitch. I've heard 1,000 pitches. Most of them are forgettable. But you've done something different. You've created an experience. You've shown me that you understand something most entrepreneurs miss." "What's that?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. "That business is ultimately about human connection, about understanding what people need, not just what they think they want. This meal tonight, it wasn't trying to impress us with expense or rarity. It impressed us with authenticity, with soul. That's rare." The other investors nodded in agreement. Patricia leaned forward. "The tech world is full of people who can code, who can build platforms and scale companies. What's rare is someone who understands the human element. If you can bring this level of authenticity to your business, I'm very interested in being part of it." One by one, the other investors expressed similar sentiments. The dinner he had been so terrified would be a disaster had become his most successful pitch meeting ever. Not because of anything he had done, but because of food, because of Rosa. After the guests left around 11 o'clock, Michael walked back through the house in a daze. They had all asked for the caterer's information. They had all wanted to book Rosa for their own events, though he had kept deflecting, saying he would pass along their interest. William had even said he was ready to write a check that night, that he didn't need to see the formal presentation. Michael found Rosa in the kitchen, cleaning up. The counters were spotless, as if the whirlwind of cooking had never happened. She was washing the last of the pots, her sleeves rolled up, her movements efficient and tired. "Rosa," he said from the doorway. She turned and he saw the exhaustion on her face. She had probably been working for 8 straight hours, creating a miracle from nothing. "Did the dinner go well, Mr. Harrison?" she asked. "It went—" Michael paused, trying to find words adequate to describe what had happened. "It was the most successful business dinner I've ever had. They loved the food. They loved everything. They asked about the caterer, wanted to hire you for their own events." Rosa smiled, a small, tired smile. "That's good. Where did you learn to cook like that?" The question came out more intense than he intended. That wasn't just home cooking. That was professional, beyond professional. Rosa turned off the water and dried her hands on a towel. For a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she met his eyes directly, and something in her expression made him stand up straighter. "I owned 3 restaurants in Mexico City, Mr. Harrison. For 15 years I ran them. I had a staff of 15 chefs, 3 locations, regular features in the food magazines. We were very successful." Michael felt like the floor had tilted beneath him. "What? Then why am I here cleaning houses?" Rosa finished his sentence. "Because life is not always about success, Mr. Harrison. Sometimes it's about sacrifice." She moved to sit at the small kitchen table, gesturing for him to join her. Michael found himself sitting across from her, this woman he had barely seen as human until tonight. "My daughter got sick when she was 16, Rosa continued, her voice steady but carrying the weight of old pain. "Very sick. The kind of sick where you realize that all your success, all your money, all your achievements mean nothing if you can't save the person you love most." Michael leaned forward, listening in a way he couldn't remember listening to anyone in years. "We tried everything in Mexico, but the treatment she needed wasn't available there, so I sold my restaurants, all 3 of them. I used that money to come to America, to get her into a program at Johns Hopkins. I had no papers to work legally in the field I knew, so I took whatever job I could find. The Thompsons hired me 22 years ago, and they were kind enough not to ask too many questions." "Your daughter," Michael said quietly. "Did she lived for 10 more years. Good years. Years where she went to school, made friends, fell in love, experienced life. She died 5 years ago peacefully, surrounded by people who loved her." Rosa's eyes were bright but not crying. "Those 10 years cost me everything I had built, and I would pay that price again 1,000 times." The kitchen was silent except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Michael felt something cracking open inside his chest, something that had been locked tight for so long he had forgotten it was there. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry for how I've treated you. I didn't see you. I didn't even try to see you." Rosa reached across the table and patted his hand, a gesture so simple and kind that Michael felt his eyes burning. "You are not the first person to look at a maid and see only a maid, Mr. Harrison. Most people see what they expect to see, nothing more. But you saved me tonight," Michael said. "You didn't have to. I've been nothing but rude and dismissive. You could have let me fail."
"Why did you help me?"
Rosa stood up, moving back to the counter to finish wiping it down. "Because that's not who I am. My worth is not determined by how others treat me. It's determined by who I choose to be, regardless of circumstances." Michael sat there at the kitchen table watching her clean, and for the first time in years, maybe in his life, he felt truly humbled. This woman had lost everything and yet had more dignity, more grace, more genuine strength than anyone he knew. She had been here all along, invisible in his expensive house, carrying a lifetime of wisdom he had been too blind to notice. Michael didn't sleep that night. He lay in his enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Rosa over and over in his mind. Every word she had said felt like a mirror held up to his life, and he didn't like what he saw reflected back. He had built an empire. He had money, success, property, everything the world told him to want. But what had he sacrificed to get it? Not things that mattered like Rosa had. He had sacrificed connection. He had sacrificed depth. He had sacrificed the very humanity that made life worth living. And for what? So he could sit alone in a big house eating meals he didn't taste? Working on deals that would just lead to more deals? When dawn broke, Michael was already up. He showered, dressed, and went downstairs to find Rosa in the kitchen, as always, preparing his morning coffee. But this time everything looked different. He saw the care she put into even this simple task. The way she measured the grounds precisely. The way she set out a small plate with fresh fruit cut perfectly. Details he had never noticed before. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," she said, just like every other morning. "Rosa, can we talk?" Michael pulled out a chair at the kitchen table. "Please sit with me." She looked surprised, but set down the coffee pot and sat across from him. Her hands folded in her lap, that same calm expression on her face. "I've been thinking all night about what you said," Michael began. "About worth not being determined by how others treat you. About choosing who you want to be regardless of circumstances. I realized something. I've spent my whole adult life building this image of success, but I have no idea who I actually am underneath it all." Rosa listened without interrupting, giving him the gift of her full attention. "I want to understand," Michael continued. "How do you do it? How do you maintain that dignity, that sense of self after losing everything?" Rosa was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. "Mr. Harrison, I didn't lose everything. That's where people make a mistake. They think success is measured in businesses and money and titles. But those are just things. They come and go. What cannot be taken from you is who you are in here." She placed her hand over her heart. "My daughter taught me that in her last years. She had no money, no career, no future in the way the world measures it. But she had love. She had gratitude. She had the ability to find joy in a sunny day or a good book or a conversation with a friend." "But you gave up your restaurants," Michael said. "Your life's work?" "No," Rosa corrected gently. "My life's work wasn't the restaurants. The restaurants were just buildings, just businesses. My life's work was love, caring for my daughter, making food that brought people joy, creating beauty where I could. That work continues, just in different forms." Michael felt something shift in his chest. "I don't think I know how to do that. How to find meaning beyond achievement." "Then perhaps it's time to learn," Rosa said simply. "And the first step is to see. Really see. The world around you, the people in it. When was the last time you looked at those gardens outside and really saw them? When was the last time you had a conversation with someone where you weren't thinking about business?" Michael realized he couldn't remember. Maybe years. Maybe ever. Over the following days, something changed in that house. Michael started getting up earlier, joining Rosa for coffee before she began her day. They talked. Real conversations about life, about loss, about what matters. She told him stories about her restaurants, about her daughter, about coming to America with nothing but hope and determination. He found himself sharing things he had never told anyone. His fears, his loneliness, the nagging feeling that no amount of success ever felt like enough. Rosa listened to it all without judgment, occasionally offering a perspective that would stop him in his tracks. "You know what your problem is, Mr. Harrison?" she said one morning. "You think you have to earn your worth. Every deal, every success, it's like you're trying to prove something. But worth isn't something you earn. It's something you already have just by being human. The question is whether you choose to honor it, in yourself and in others." Michael started noticing things he had been blind to before. The way Rosa cared for the house wasn't just about cleaning. It was about respect, about treating even inanimate things with consideration. The way she tended the gardens, talking softly to the plants as she watered them. The way she prepared meals like each one was a gift, not just a task to complete. He began asking questions. About cooking, about gardening, about life in Mexico, about everything. Rosa answered patiently, sometimes teaching him small things. How to properly taste food, paying attention to each flavor. How to tell when a plant needs water just by looking at it. How to find satisfaction in doing something well, regardless of who notices. One afternoon, Michael made a decision. He called his assistant and cleared his schedule for the day. Then he found Rosa in the garden. "Teach me," he said. "Teach you what, Mr. Harrison?" "Everything. I want to learn how to cook, how to take care of this house properly, how to garden. I've been living here like a guest in my own life. I want to learn how to actually live." Rosa studied him for a long moment, and he wondered if she would refuse. But then she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. Okay, we start in the kitchen. The next few weeks were unlike anything Michael had ever experienced. Rosa taught him to cook, starting with basics. How to properly cut an onion, how to taste as you go, adjusting seasonings, how to be patient with slow-cooking dishes, resisting the urge to rush. He burned things. He oversalted things. He made mistakes that would have sent the old Michael into a rage. But Rosa just calmly helped him understand what went wrong and how to fix it. Cooking is like life, she told him as he struggled with a complicated sauce. You cannot force it. You cannot skip steps and expect good results. You must pay attention, adjust as needed, and trust the process. In the garden, she showed him how to plant, how to prune, how to work with the soil rather than against it. Michael, who hadn't done physical labor in years, found himself sweating in the sun, dirt under his fingernails, completely absorbed in the simple act of helping things grow. In Mexico, we say that a garden teaches you about time, Rosa said as they worked together. You plant seeds and you must wait. You cannot make them grow faster by worrying or working harder. You do your part, provide what they need, and then you wait. This is hard for people like you to learn. People like me? Michael asked, sitting back on his heels. People who think everything can be controlled, optimized, rushed. The garden says no. It grows at its own pace. You must adapt to it, not the other way around. Michael started eating meals at the kitchen table instead of at his desk. He began taking walks around the property, really looking at things. He called his investors and business partners and had conversations that weren't just about transactions. He asked about their families, their lives, their interests beyond work. Some of them seemed shocked. Others opened up in ways that surprised him. One evening, about a month after the dinner party, Michael was helping Rosa prepare dinner. Just dinner for the two of them, nothing fancy. He was chopping vegetables while she prepared the main dish, working in comfortable silence. Rosa, he said suddenly, that night of the dinner party you saved my business deal. Those investors are moving forward because of you, because of what you created. You should benefit from that. Rosa looked up from her work. I was doing my job, Mr. Harrison. No, Michael said firmly. You went far beyond your job, and I want to do something for you. What do you want? A raise, a bonus? I could help you start a restaurant again. Help you get your papers sorted out properly. Whatever you need. Rosa set down her knife and turned to face him fully. Mr. Harrison, if you want to do something for me, then learn the lessons I'm trying to teach you. Don't go back to the man you were before. Don't let this moment of awareness fade away as you get busy again. That would be the real gift. I'm not going back, Michael said, and he meant it. But Rosa, please, let me help you somehow. You've given me so much. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. There is something. The program that saved my daughter. At Johns Hopkins. They help children from families who cannot afford treatment. If you wanted to make a donation in my daughter's name, that would mean something to me. Consider it done, Michael said immediately. But I want to do more than just write a check. I want to create something lasting. A foundation maybe, or a scholarship program. Will you help me design it? Your experience, your perspective, it's invaluable. Rosa's eyes became shiny with tears, but she was smiling. You're learning, Mr. Harrison, you're finally learning. Michael, he said. Please call me Michael. Mr. Harrison is what people call someone they don't really know. That night after dinner was finished and cleaned up, Michael sat in his office, but he wasn't working. He was writing. Ideas for the foundation, yes, but also thoughts about his company, about how he wanted to do business differently, about treating employees like humans instead of resources, about building a culture where people mattered as much as profits. He realized that Rosa had been right about everything. His worth wasn't in his bank account or his success. It was in his choices, in how he treated people, in whether he lived with consciousness and care or just sleepwalked through an expensive life. For the first time in years, Michael felt awake. Really awake. And it was terrifying and exciting and completely unexpected, all because a woman he had dismissed as invisible had the courage and kindness to show him what he had been missing. 6 months had passed since that life-changing dinner party, and the house no longer felt like a museum. It felt like a home. Michael had transformed more than just his living space. He had transformed himself, though the journey was far from over. The foundation was real now, not just an idea. The Martinez Foundation for Children's Medical Access had officially launched 3 months ago, with Rosa as a board member and advisor. Michael had been shocked when she agreed to take such a visible role, but she explained that her daughter would have wanted her to help others in the same situation. She always said her illness was a chance to do something meaningful. Rosa told him during one of their morning coffee talks that had become ritual. If her story can help save other children, then her suffering had purpose. They had already helped 12 families, covering medical expenses and connecting them with top specialists. Michael attended every board meeting, listened to every family story, and found himself crying more than once. The old Michael would have been embarrassed by such emotion. The new Michael understood that tears were just proof you still had a heart that could feel. But the foundation was only part of the change. Michael's company had noticed the shift in their CEO. He had implemented new policies, things that made his board nervous, but felt right to him. Mandatory time off, mental health days, a profit-sharing program that extended to every employee, not just executives, parent leave that actually supported families, a company culture that valued life balance, not just productivity. "You're going to lose your competitive edge," one of his board members warned. "No," Michael replied calmly. "We're going to become the kind of company that actually deserves good people." There's a difference between competitive and cruel. Some investors had been skeptical. A few had even pulled out, uncomfortable with his new approach. But others, including the ones from that dinner party, had doubled down on their support. They saw something different in Michael now, a depth that had been missing before. And surprisingly, the company's performance had improved. Turns out people work better when they're treated like humans instead of machines. Michael's personal life had changed too. He had started volunteering at a community kitchen every Tuesday evening, cooking meals for people experiencing homelessness. Rosa had introduced him to the program, and at first, he felt awkward and out of place. But the director, a woman named Helen, who had been doing this work for 20 years, welcomed him without judgment. "Everyone has something to contribute," Helen told him on his first night. "Your fancy business skills don't matter here. What matters is whether you can chop onions and treat people with dignity." He learned both, and in the process, he met people whose stories humbled him. Veterans who had lost everything, families one paycheck away from disaster, people with brilliant minds and broken bodies, or broken minds and strong bodies, all of them struggling in a world that had forgotten them. One evening, a man named Robert, who came in regularly for meals, asked Michael what he did for a living. "I run a tech company," Michael answered, expecting the usual response, some mixture of awe or resentment. But Robert just nodded. "That's nice. You any good at it?" "I'm trying to be better at it," Michael said honestly. "I'm learning that being good at business means more than just making money." "Smart man," Robert said. And somehow that simple affirmation from a homeless veteran meant more to Michael than any business award he had ever received. Back at the house, Michael and Rosa had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. They cooked together, most evenings now, experimenting with different cuisines, sharing stories while they worked. The kitchen had become the heart of the home, filled with laughter and conversation and the smells of good food. Michael had also started inviting people over, real invitations, not business dinners. His employees, some people from the community kitchen, the families from the foundation. Mixed groups that would never normally interact. Rosa always helped him prepare, teaching him to see entertaining not as a performance but as an act of generosity. "When you invite someone into your home," she explained, "you're saying, 'I see you. You matter. You're worth my time and effort.' That's the real gift, not the fancy food or expensive wine." One Saturday afternoon, Michael was in the garden planting bulbs for the spring when his phone rang. It was Thomas Anderson, the legendary investor from the dinner party. "Michael, I'm calling with an interesting proposition," Thomas said. "I'm retiring next year and I'm looking for someone to take over my mentorship program for young entrepreneurs. People keep suggesting candidates, but after that dinner at your house, I can't stop thinking you'd be perfect for it." "Me?" Michael was genuinely surprised. "Thomas, I'm still figuring things out myself. I don't feel qualified to mentor anyone." That's exactly why you're qualified, Thomas replied. You understand that success isn't just about the numbers. You get the human element. That's rare, Michael, and it's what the next generation needs to learn. Michael agreed to think about it. That evening, he discussed it with Rosa over dinner. What do you think? He asked. Should I do it? Rosa smiled. What does your heart say? My heart says yes. But my head worries I'll mess it up, that I don't have enough wisdom to share. Michael, wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask the right questions and learn from your mistakes. You've learned more in 6 months than some people learn in a lifetime. And more importantly, you're still learning. You haven't decided you've arrived. That humility, that openness, that's what makes a good teacher. He called Thomas the next day and accepted. The mentorship program started 2 months later. Michael met with 6 young entrepreneurs, all brilliant, all driven, all making the same mistakes he had made. They were so focused on success that they couldn't see the cost of how they were achieving it. In his first session, Michael didn't talk about business strategies or growth hacking or any of the things they expected. Instead, he told them about Rosa, about how a housekeeper he had barely noticed taught him everything that actually mattered, about how real wealth has nothing to do with your bank account. One young woman, Lisa, raised her hand. But Mr. Harrison, if we focus on all this soft stuff, won't we lose to competitors who are more ruthless? Michael smiled. I used to think the same thing. But here's what I've learned. Companies built only on ruthlessness are fragile. They're held together by fear and pressure. The moment things get tough, they crack. But companies built on genuine care, on seeing employees as whole humans, on values that go beyond profit, those companies have a foundation that can weather anything. Plus, and this is important, what's the point of building a successful company if you're miserable and everyone around you is miserable? Over the following months, Michael watched these young entrepreneurs start to shift, just as he had. Some of them resisted at first, but others immediately grasped what he was trying to teach them. He brought Rosa to one of the sessions, and she spoke about her journey, about loss and resilience and choosing dignity over bitterness. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. One evening, almost a year after that dinner party that changed everything, Michael and Rosa were sitting on the back porch watching the sunset. They did this often now, just sitting quietly together enjoying the peace. Rosa, can I ask you something? Michael said. Of course. Why did you stay? After I was so rude to you at the beginning, why didn't you just quit and find a better employer? Rosa was quiet for a moment, watching the orange and pink sky. I saw something in you, Michael. Under all that anger and ambition and loneliness, I saw a good heart that had gotten buried. I thought maybe, if the right moment came, that heart might wake up. I'm glad I was right. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. You saved my life, Rosa. You know that, right? I was so lost and I didn't even know it. I was drowning in success and couldn't feel it happening. You saved your own life, Rosa corrected gently. I just held up a mirror. You're the one who had the courage to look at yourself honestly and choose to change. That's all you, Michael. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. I've been thinking, Michael said. This house is too big for one person, and you shouldn't be working as a housekeeper anymore. You should be living here as family. We could convert the guest wing into your own private space. You've taught me that family isn't just blood. It's the people who see you, who show up, who care. Rosa turned to look at him, surprise and emotion on her face. Michael, I know I can never repay what you've given me, he continued, but I can honor it. I can live differently because of it. And I can make sure you're never alone, never just an employee, never invisible again. What do you say? Rosa smiled through tears. I say yes. And I say you've learned the most important lesson of all. What's that? That wealth isn't something you have. It's something you create through how you live and how you love. You're finally rich, Michael. Really rich. A year later, Michael stood in front of a room full of business students at a prestigious university. He had been invited to give a lecture on entrepreneurship, and the students were eager to hear secrets of success from a self-made millionaire.